Author and photographer Marc Silber shares his tips for good critique and then takes a look at some of the photos from our AYP community.
All right, let's dive into critiquing. This is something I wrote. It's out of my book, Advancing Your Photography. So this is called On Point Critiques, and it's basically how I believe critique should be done. So the first thing that you should do is there's a very specific sequence to critiquing that I think is really important. You want to be specific and you want to be constructive in your critiques. Okay, the worst thing that can happen, and I had this happen in art school, is just to be chopped up. And in art school, one of the things I learned is if you were in the favor of the teacher, you got a great critique. If he didn't like or agree with your work, you got a really bad critique, or sometimes none at all. This is not cool. It's not helpful. And if I could come away with only one thing that I learned from that is to be able to not listen to somebody's negative critique and throw it out the window. But there's really two things that it comes down to. One, lead with something constructive no matter what. Always find something constructive as your first comment. And second of all, if you do feel a change is needed, point out only one thing, and one thing only that you feel could be changed. Because if you give people 10 things, hey, I would crop it this way and I would have used this different lens, it's just confusing and it's not constructive. Give them 1 point and 1 point only. Okay? Those are our rules within AYP. Now listen, beyond that, it doesn't have to be, oh wow, 2 thumbs up, everything's groovy, you did the best. Like that isn't helpful either. If you see something that resonates with you, tell them what it is. But don't just make it like another, thumbs up, oh wow, awesome photo, That really doesn't help the photographer. Like tell them why it resonated, okay? And if you see something that doesn't work, tell them what it is. You don't have to chop them into little tiny pieces in the process. In fact, you shouldn't. But just what do you see? Okay. Now we are going to critique, and this is what's known as a blind critique. I haven't ingested these photographs. Jared's going to bring them up, and I'm going to tell you what I see. So Jared, without further ado, tell us what we've got, who these brave souls are. Okay, that's pretty cool.
And
That's
I'll
groovy, is
read
my
the
first thought.
description that was submitted with this. So, hi, I'm a 18-year-old photographer from Illinois. My dream would be to open a wet plate studio of
Wow.
my own.
Wow.
Started photography 2 years ago and still trying to figure out what photography style they want to focus on.
Hey, don't worry
Yeah,
about trying
here's
to
the
figure
photo.
out your style. I'm still trying to figure it out, and I've been photographing since I was 12. Okay, so it's a lifelong process of figuring it out. And, going back to Annie Leibovitz, she's known for her portraiture, but at some point, she actually took a class with Ansel Adams in Yosemite, and she really wanted to get into landscape photography. And you could see her desire to do that. And I'm going to be straight with you. Her landscapes are not very magical. That's not her thing, but she just wants to move into that world, and so she did. Okay, so who is this, Jared? Who did this? I want to be able to address you by name.
This was Jack.
Jack. Jack, I love it. It's very experimental, and that is a cool thing. It looks like you projected onto your subject here. I don't have anything negative to say. I don't have anything I'd point out to you at all. I think your experimenting is to be encouraged and applauded, and bravo. I think you got something there, and keep doing it. So that's my blind critique. Well done.
Yeah, I think it's fun to see some of the more experimental photos, and that's why I definitely pulled that one out because it was just so interesting.
All right. Well, let's keep moving because we got a lot of ground to cover here. But again,
Uh,
Jack, keep Keep it up. 18 years old, you're on the right track. You really are.
Yeah, keep submitting to AYP Club
I'll
as well. We'd
say
love
one
to
last
see
thing here.
more of your
This
work.
this really is for me a throwback to the '60s, and although it's different, it's something that we might have seen in the '60s, and that's a cool thing. I'm a '60s guy. It's not really just that it's a throwback to the '60s. I like your willingness to try something that isn't in the kind of the current norm. I think that's great. Okay, so I love the reflections. I really think that's awesome, and that to me is the biggest feature of this image. My critique is this: I don't know where my eye should go. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but it's missing one thing, which Bob Holmes calls a punctuation point. There should be one point where my eye is drawn to. Now, listen, in the foreground, the reflections are awesome because it's like, wow, that's like my eye is drawn to that. But then in the background, I don't know where to look. If you had something in that image, whether it was an animal crossing that stream or a person or a bird or anything that would be like, you see what's happening is my eye gets drawn, I get like, wow, excited, and then I don't know where to go from there. So that's a question of being patient. You came across something really cool here with that reflection, and maybe you had to wait an hour. Maybe you had to wait half a day. Or maybe you had to just arrange to, and there's nothing wrong with this, to have somebody walking across that stream, to give it a punctuation point. That would have made it a bang up, amazing photograph. So you've got the stage set. The next thing is, what do I want on that stage? What could make that thing pop? Okay? So if you have this in your environment, which I'm maybe guessing that you do, go back there, wait it out, be patient, wait for something to cross that stream that will give it a punctuation point. Okay, and then you'll have, and if you are near that spot, will you please do that? And that goes for any of these critiques. Please come back and show us that next version. Okay. All right, Jared, let's keep her moving. We got a lot of ground
All
to
right,
cover.
we've got Lyle Robinson's photo next. No particular comments for this one. So.
All right. So, okay, here's a leading line, drawing my eye, and I like this photograph. Drawing my eye, which is what a leading line does, and it's the dotted line. Now, okay, again, I don't have a punctuation point. I have a part of a punctuation point. What could have happened, unfortunately, where my eye is drawn is to the car on the left, somewhat on the car on the right, not to the guy walking. So somehow, compositionally, it's a little confusing because I'm drawn to the car, but I really think I should be watching the guy walking. So we're doing what's called a split attention, which is something you want to try to avoid. You can do it on purpose. And we had an example with Deanne Fitzmaurice doing this, where we had, I don't know if you remember it, but there was an image in the barber shop, and we had 3 photographs within one. That's a technique. But this one doesn't quite work because it's not really 3 separate photographs. It's one photograph. So what I would like to see here is my eye being drawn to the guy, because I really feel like that must be where I should be looking. Now, the only way that probably would work is if you moved over across, to the left. I'm up where that little hill thing is, where it goes off the path, and somehow maybe got in closer to him. So he was the feature of that leading line. Now, in that case, the leading line would have been the path leading to him. But I would just follow that guy until he did something interesting, some kind of gesture. Also, maybe separating his legs. You've heard Bob Holmes talking about he waits for that just that right moment when the legs are separate and maybe his hand is out. Maybe he's pointing at something, but something would go on there that kind of brought that punctuation point. I don't really think the car being a punctuation point is that interesting. So I'd get rid of the car. I'd maybe even wait for those cars to get out of the way. In fact, I would. Let's just skip the cars altogether. Let's go in on this guy. Come in tight. Follow him. See if you can get, again, that magic point where there's a gesture going. And that would make that photograph really pop. Okay? Hope that helps.
We hope that you enjoyed that video. If you did, please give it a like and leave a comment. We love to hear from you. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you can know when all of our future videos come out. And finally, be sure to get out there and capture your own images of life.